I want to thank you so much for joining us. This is our webinar here, a weekly webinar at HFA. I'm Mark Schumacher, the CEO, and we always like to welcome you because we always end up having some phenomenal subject matter that you're going to really be able to have a ton of takeaways from. And today we are talking about search engine optimization, and there's been a number of changes to it. It's something that a lot of people, frankly, don't quite understand, but they know it's important to deal with. So we're going to be talking more about that today. But before we start, I want to remind you of a couple of things. On the right side of your screen, you do have a box there that says chat. If you have any questions, please enter the questions, send it. We'll do our best to get to that. Although I do have a number of the questions that you submitted when you signed up, which is always great, and we appreciate that. And second of all, remember that these are recorded. You'll have the ability to go to our library at myhfa.org/webinar and find all the webinars we've done that are on many important subject matters, and they're really terrific resource and library for anything like that that you need. We do have two guests scheduled today, but one of them is working his way on. But at the moment, I'm going to introduce Carrie Fletcher to you. If you have been in our library, you will have seen Carrie a few times. She is the Director of Marketing for Bears Furniture in Florida, but she has a tremendous marketing background, all aspects of marketing, and she's also an adjunct professor at the University of South Florida. So it's always great to have you, Carrie. We appreciate that
Thank you.
because you have the expertise and you also put it to work. And we're hoping that Richard Harris will be joining us from Orbit Interactive in a few minutes. But by gosh, we're going to start, Carrie. We don't need anybody else. You and I can.
We're going to start.
You and I can just start this thing. Let me ask you this: have there, what would you say really have been the most notable changes in recent months or last couple of years, if you will, with SEO? Are there some changes that have been significant? Because a lot of the questions that came in beforehand, a lot of people are really asking, what are some things that have changed? And I don't know if they're referring to things like cookies or whatever they're talking about, but SEO, talk about what some of the changes have been that have maybe made it a little more challenging for folks.
It's interesting. I think it's important to define SEO first and
Let's
remind
do it.
people that SEO, search engine optimization, is the organic portion of getting people to your website. So this is not the paid thing. It has nothing to do with any of those. SEO is almost totally dependent on crawler data. So this is what happens when the major search engines crawl your site. So when we're talking about changes in SEO, it's really changes in what the crawlers are looking for, or it's changes in the crawls themselves.
Okay.
So, so with that said, yeah, Google makes a lot of changes, and they don't always tell us when they make changes, but you can see it in your numbers.
Right.
And a lot of us remember this year, April, everything just kind of like flattened. And I'm sure a lot of people on the call here probably were looking at their Google Analytics and going, what the heck just happened? And that's an example of one of Google's changes to their algorithms. As we're moving forward into the transition into Google Analytics 4, GA4, which is replacing the current product, which is Universal Analytics, we're going to be seeing differences in what the crawlers are looking for, because the crawlers are looking for two different things. So Universal
Okay.
Analytics is still live, and so those UA crawlers are still looking for the things they've been looking for, and we can get into more depth on that in a bit. But the GA4 crawlers, that's more of a conversion-based analytics. So that's really what it's looking for, and it's definitely optimized for e-commerce, and it's optimized for apps, which Google's never been optimized for before. Hello, Richard. And so there's constant changes. Sometimes they're little changes, sometimes they're big changes. But really it's just a change in the way that it's looking at things. So, and
I want to dig down on that for just a second here. So what are the current, when you talked about the universal, what are the crawls looking for right now? Because remember, we're talking to retailers on this particular webinar. So what are those things that currently are they looking for?
Google has always looked for, a few things, and some of these things haven't changed. Keywords. Google wants to know, what's on your site. What is your site all about? What are you here for? If you're selling sofas and you've got things about sneakers, Google's going to get very confused and they're going to drop the ranking on your site. So that's one of those, that's just a basic duh. So keywords are one of the most important things in any kind of crawl. The other thing they're looking for is links. What are you linking to? Are you linking within your site? And are people linking to you? That's a very important thing. Backlinks has always been an important part of the Google landscape. So those things haven't changed. You know, they're looking for text, they're looking for things they understand, they're looking for organization, and then they're looking into like much deeper things, you know, hierarchical things and taxonomy things and, you know, all those super deep things that are much more technical in the crawl. But, you know, just to keep it simple and just to know that these are the things that don't change, have links, have lots of text, have alt text on your photos. That's something that most people miss is your images need alt text. And watch your bounce rates, because if you've got pages that are bouncing, Google's going to low priority you again on that. And just make sure that what's on your site is relevant to you and your company and your product and what you're doing and what you're selling.
Holy
Uh,
smokes. Okay, I've just run out of ink.
right.
Pen is
Well,
rocking and rolling here. A
well,
lot of
I,
great stuff. I want to introduce, by the way, Richard Harris has joined us. He's the owner of Orbit Interactive. I think that, it's really kind of interesting, Carrie. You presented such a huge swath there in knowing that a lot of folks know essentially what SEO means, but not really what it is. And I think there's some things here I really want to peel back the onion here. And Richard, I'm gonna let you kind of jump into this. Let me ask you this question. So when we talk about keywords, I mean, I want to just at least talk about that to start with, because I don't know that there's universality in how people even view that. So tell me, for home furniture retailers here, so when we talk about keywords being the first thing that these crawls are looking for, so what are we talking about here? What are the keywords that are getting their attention?
so it's not fair to say just keywords. It is really easy, friendly content. So Google did an update that came out on the 22nd of this month. It's a pretty rough update, quite honestly. It basically, the way Mark at Google put it to me was pretty straightforward. Is if your site has been developed and built for Google, your site is going to stink. They are trying to get rid of,
Great.
and he used a different word than stink, but I'm trying to be kind. It's basically they're trying to get rid of people who built their sites purposely to try to be overly Google friendly. And Google does this every so often, but a lot of it is to make sure that the site is got good content on it that's original, that is user friendly, but also informs the user. What they want to do is know that if somebody searches for something, they want to make sure they're shown a result that fits what the user is looking for, not just, as he put it, keywords and phrases that you know is going to make Google happy. That's not what they want.
So okay, so and we're going to jump back here to something that we talked about before you just joined us off the top of this, which is the fact that the whole point of SEO is organic. So if
Mhm.
you're so what you're saying is they basically are now saying with this new, and I'm assuming you're talking about Google Analytics 4 that we just talked about, right?
No, I'm actually,
No?
so Google Analytics 4 is how you measure, and you can look in the back to your site.
Gotcha.
Google puts out updates on how they want the algorithm
Gotcha.
updates that people is the black and white animals, penguin, panda. They don't usually remember all the other cutesy names along the ways, but this is a new update that they just put out for how they're going to measure and go through things.
Gotcha. So what I'm hearing, and this is a huge takeaway, is I'm thinking about people that are listening to this who are, thinking about, how they approach this whole subject is. So if you're trying to build your website to, check all the boxes, or you think you're checking all the boxes, Google is saying that's exactly the wrong thing. So when we talk about this whole organic piece, it's not a question of do I have these four keywords in here. It's more a question of are the words matching who you are, and what you said even a second ago. You talked about Carrie. You talked about text even on photos. So the whole point of this, we just want to start this out with this conversation is organic, organic, organic. It's got to be your story. It can't be formulaic. Carrie, am I overstating that, or is that correct? Why don't you both talk about that? Quick.
It's very, very correct. And, you know, to Richard's point of, you know, over optimizing your site for Google, if we go back in history, I don't know how many people on this are old dogs like me. I've been doing this 20 years, right? So when I was building sites 20 years ago, who remembers having to do meta text? You would throw text into your footer in reverse, and because you wanted the crawlers to find these, you would actually seed it with keywords. And then that turned into, you know, Google said, oh no, that's bad, we don't want that anymore, because people were putting their competitors' names in there. I mean, there was all sorts of stuff that you would do, and that was an acceptable strategy until Google made an update, and then it was no longer acceptable, right? So that turned into these little blocks that people would put on each page, and it would be like, you know, sort of an R story, but it was just like like a just word pizza. It was like word vomit in the middle of your page, right? Well, now Google looks at that and they will actually devalue your page again for that. And that's, not
Yeah.
a new development, but that's, a few years back, they said, oh, no, that's not good either. We don't want that. And we're actually going to low value you if we come across that. And so any of these keyword seeding techniques for SEO, they always end up backfiring. It's just a matter of how
Yeah.
long it takes. And so right now, yeah, they're looking at people who have designed their entire sites around this and saying, no, 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 you're not real. we want these words to mean something.
So Richard, huge takeaway here right out of the gates is then if you're wasting your time, and I'm using that term saying wasting your time, if you're wasting your time trying to be clever and cute with certain kinds of words that you think will fit the formula, you're wasting your time, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the new update actually is called the helpful content update. So they want to make sure that the content you're reading is helpful. The easy way to kind of think of SEO, because I always refer to SEO as the dark arts in the world of digital, because
Uh-huh.
you really don't know what people are doing behind the scenes because it just seems kind of foreign. But think of it in these kind of simple 4 pillars. And it's a really easy way to think of it. First pillar is always going to be keywords and content, because at the end of the day, we have to know who you are and what you do. The next pillar comes as technical SEO, which sounds fancy, but the reality is it's just about who's hosting your site, how fast do your pages load, just simple basic things like that. But Google cares about that, and they also care, does it load on mobile the right way, because everything's about mobile first. And then you look at on-page SEO, and on-page SEO is how Carrie referred to it. That's the meta tags, that's the alt tags, that's the things that are actually going to be on the page that helps the bots read your page. So that's when we start talking about robot text and things on those lines. It sounds all fancy, but it's really just making sure that those systems can do it. And then off-page SEO is the fourth pillar, and that's backlinks. And there's arguments you say backlinks aren't as important as they used to be, but Google still wants to see authority. They still want to see that your website is seen as something worthwhile by others. So your brands, if you're carrying, particular brands, whether it be a hooker or something else, you want to get a backlink to their site, to your site. That's a helpful thing, because their sites are one thing and they want to have them from you as well, because it helps on both sides. So your brand names are very helpful to have those backlinks set up for, and how you carry those out, as well as any designers you might work with or something along those lines.
I want to remind people, by the way, that we're going to get to rather rapidly here, but I think this background is really important for us to have it. But we're going to talk about utilizing these SEO tools to really drive traffic and how that can really be helpful. But I want to continue to kind of stay as granular as we are, because these are really great tips. So let me ask you both this, and I'll just throw this out, and Carrie, you can start. You talked about they're looking for links, but these links also, you can't just put a ton of links on there and just just kind of do that sort of thing. So talk to me a little bit about how you can ensure that there's an organicness to the links we're talking about, so that they don't ping you negatively.
And that's a super great point, because yes, Google looks at links, but guess what? Whoever is linking to you is also subject to crawl by Google, and Google is also ranking them whether they're authoritative or not. So if you're just throwing out blogs and throwing them all sorts of places, blogs do have a place, and that's a great way to get some links in there, but those are probably not being read as authoritative. And I think that's probably what this new update is about, is trying to clean up the internet a little bit. And so, so yes, Lexington, Hooker, these companies, not just listing you on their page as an authorized retailer, but linking to you, incredibly valuable, because obviously Hooker is very authoritative on their furniture. Lexington is authoritative on their, these are, authoritative links. So you want links, but you want the right links, and that's definitely important.
So Richard, to play off of that a little bit, so there's care that needs to be taken, it sounds to me like, for the links that you do connect with, if you can be, in lack of a better term, penalized for linking to somebody else who's going to drag your numbers down.
Absolutely. And you also don't, to that point, you also don't want to link to something that doesn't make any sense. You don't want to link to the local car show if you're selling furniture, just because, a lot of people are going to the car show site. So it doesn't have, good links have to be thought out. And there's also, people also want to put as many as possible. It doesn't make many, it takes high quality. So it's really, and they have a quality score system on it, and you don't want anything under a 50. You really want links that are worth 70 or more. and we want to look for those quality links. And there's ways to go in your content console, and you can look and see the scoring system for different links, different URLs, and you can see how those are going in, because Google's now opened that up to where you can go through that, drop down through the menu pieces now and be able to see, hey, how's this rating? How's this kind of look through it and say, hey, does this make sense for me to go ahead and do? Because finding ways to really help your ranking overall is about looking to see what's the best ways to use different sites, different pieces.
So I want to make sure we connect all the dots here. How do you find that then? So how do I, if I'm one of the folks listening to this webinar that's trying to learn more about this, how do I find that scoring system?
So if you go in your content console side of things, it goes to, I think it's organic traffic. So I got to think through my side. Going through, and then you click on organic traffic pieces, and then you'll get to where it shows URLs, and then you'll be able to go down to URLs and be able to measure, say, okay, where did that URL come from? Is that URL making sense for me? The reason being is you want to look at it, it's by your own, you can actually look at it as your own URLs on your own site now, as well as others. Because if you have a URL on your site or a page that's actually not performing well, you want to change that page immediately and get rid of it or update it or do something to it, because it's affecting your overall site. But you can do it as well on other people's sites, which is kind of fun. The reason for this is obviously the whole goal in SEO is to rank on the first page of Google. Okay, that's what everybody's goal and dream is. Okay, and not everybody's going to do it. There's 10 positions, but it's 10 positions based on a keyword or a phrase or whatever that person's looking for. So you may not be the #1 for furniture in Houston, but you could be the #1 for sofas in Houston. So it all depends on what it is that you kind of rank there. The difference between being #1 on that page in Google is a 38% click-through rate for #1 position. When you get down to #5 position, it goes down to 5% click-through rate. Everything under 5 is a 1% click-through rate. And as I always tell everybody in my classes at UF, if you want to hide a dead body, put it on page 2 of Google, because nobody goes. So it is, those are the kind of things. Yeah, it's a factor that it just kind of goes down very quickly, and you've got to be in that 1 through 5 positions. So you're not going to win on every single keyword. So pick the ones that are most important to you. Pick the phrases, pick the content that you want to be known for, and then go through your own site and start cleaning it up.
And I think this is a terrific advice, because if you can understand how you're scoring and how others you're linking to are scoring, then now you can make some real definitive change, right? I mean, there's not a lot of guesswork here.
Correct.
It was reminding me. I mean, in certain ways, and this is how my mind works. But what can I tell you? This almost sounded like like some of these dating services, right? You're like going, okay, well, let's see the resume on this particular suitor, and if it's, if it's just not going to help you, then what's the point? So this just sounds like such a generic out there question, but I'm just going to throw this out here. So the whole premise of our conversation today, and there's so much more we're going to dig into, by the way. This has been more good information in the first quarter of a webinar than I think ever. But okay, so we're talking here about optimize, getting on. The goal is to get on that first page of the Google search. How do we know within a reasonable doubt how that does drive traffic? How do we know that being on that first page makes that kind of difference? Because everybody watching this, whenever they watch it, are going to want to know, yeah, this is all great, but what does this really mean? Does this honestly drive traffic to my website or to my store? Carrie, can you answer that, or am I asking an impossible question?
You are not asking the impossible question. This is where Google Analytics comes in. And Google Analytics, as far as I'm concerned, is like my best friend when it comes to understanding what's going on, especially with SEO, SEM, PPC, those types of campaigns. Basically, I always tell people, because I get this question a lot, how do you know if your SEO is healthy? How do you know if your SEO is working? If Google/organic is not the #1 source, when you go into Google Analytics and you go into all traffic and you go into source medium, which is the first place I think all of us go, that's like your snapshot your overview of what's going on. You know, how healthy is your website? Organic really should be the top spot there. And if it's not, then your website is very, very unhealthy and you need some help there. And that's really how you can tell. But then there's 1,000 other things that it's going to tell you about that traffic that's coming in organically as well. It's going to tell you your bounce rates. It's going to tell you what their behaviors are. You can change the drop down away from the default of e-commerce, and you can set up your own conversion goals that you think are important to you. For me, I think it's super important if a customer goes to the store locator page. You know, we're less interested in e-commerce at our price points than we are in foot traffic. So for me, a store locator page visit is a huge indicator of success. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a full conversion. So there's so much information in Google Analytics. Now, as we get into GA4, you're going to be able to set up your own reporting for these things. You're going to be able to set your own conversion zones, and you're going to get a whole lot more information on it. So it's an exciting world we're in right now.
So Richard, and thank you, Carrie. That you did a great job of kind of capsulizing that, because I guess the misnomer is just since we know what the customer journey looks like. You know, we know that so much of it starts digitally, transacted in the brick and mortar. We know that that's the case here. So do you tell people just don't always think about SEO just being driving website traffic, but actually you can, and Carrie kind of dabbed her toes in this a little bit, but you can actually drive physical traffic into stores through SEO as well?
Absolutely, you drive physical traffic, because I mean, even if they start their journey online, and it's one of those things that we've been seeing, and I'm gonna pick on poor Wayfair here. Wayfair's been up and running for years. They're still not profitable. They can run as many commercials as they want. They can own as much as they want over HGTV. They're still not profitable as a online business, because at the end of the day, people still want to sit on that couch. They want to make sure it's the right size, right? They're looking for that, and it does drive business into the brick and mortar side. And you know, Carrie's right. I said the traffic is the first place, and you know, we mentioned bounce rate. There's a client that we were just recently dealing with, and her 84%, and it's like,
Oof.
it's the landing page. It's what's happening, because bounce rate doesn't mean that a customer went to your site and bounces off of it. What it means is they went to one page in your site and then left. They didn't go any deeper. Well, on a furniture site, that's pretty hard, because you got to go looking for it. Nobody has one page of everything they have on the front page. So they're going to want to go deeper. They're going to see things, but you got to learn to pull that customer through the site so that it works a little better. One of the things that people ask us all the time, how do I know whether SEO is working or not? And how do I get an ROI type of thing from SEO? You know, that's tough, because the easy ways I tell people to look at is look at your total organic traffic that you have today. And then when you start your SEO, which is going to take 3 to 6 months, it's not a quick solution. It's more of a marathon type piece. Measure that traffic. Then look at traffic to certain pages the same way before and how it's going. And then look at your form fills before and how it's going. That's some nice basic, simple type stuff to look at. And then, which is really going to sound evil, are you making more money or seeing more revenue with the change? If you're not, that's a problem, because the organic's not pointed at bringing the right people in. And there's a formula that I'm happy to share with people, but you can actually run the cost of what your SEO, even whether it's your time and you're doing it, or you have another company doing it, against the amount of money that you're making. And you could actually return, do you have an ROI on your SEO? And if you're not seeing it, then it's not worth it, because you take that timeline and go, what's the difference I made? And am I making the side there? That's a tough place to look. And then you can take things like Screaming Frog or SEMrush and look at your keyword rankings and look to see how's that organic traffic under the GA side. And then, look at your backlink authorities. You go through those pieces, because if somebody's doing that for you, they should be giving you a list of what your backlinks we added, what are they, how your keywords are ranking each month. Somebody should be providing you those details every single month, because if you're paying them to do SEO, they should be providing you what they're doing. And that's why I say I always call it the dark arts, because there's a lot of people who don't provide you much. And they're like, oh, we're just doing it. That doesn't really help me, because there's always changes that Google puts down. I want to know what you're doing, and is it really making a difference for me?
Is that something that you're either willing to or easy to share, as far as how you can judge your ROI, whether or not you're paying a third party or you're doing it yourself? Is that simple?
Absolutely.
Would you mind sharing that if I'm asking too much?
No, I can share it with you. Let me go here, a formula piece here. I'll see if I can get into my lovely sites here.
Because I mean, that's that's kind of news you can use here. I mean, I think a lot of people would enjoy just knowing that, because one of the questions, the reason I asked that is because there's a number of questions from people that are on the they're listening to us today who've been asking, what can I do myself? Can I do it myself? Do I have to have a third party? And it seems to me like you're saying you could, because a lot of the smaller retailers might not be able to spend the dollars to get a third party in. So.
Well, and I think anybody can do it themselves, but it's time consuming, and you have to be willing to put in the time and also read up on where the changes are and what's coming down and how does those changes affect what you're doing. And I will tell you, I make this joke all the time. It's really not a joke, because at least in our office, we have so many different products that we offer to customers, and most products have some sort of certification on them. And so every year you have to get recertified for that product. Well, that means depending on the month, I got to either take 8 to 10 tests every month just to get recertified on a product. So it becomes very challenging to do everything else you have to do, and keep all that going. And that's the part that I do find tough for folks, is how do I kind of keep all those other pieces going at the same time, and make sure that we can be successful, because most people are going to want to have time to do the regular job, not just spend their whole day taking care of their SEO.
But Richard, as you're pulling that up, I'm going to ask Carrie a quick question here, though, based upon what you just said. I'm really hearing from both of you that no matter who's doing it for you, that you still, this is one of those moments where you've got to, it sounds to me like you've got to be the best consumer of what you're doing. I mean, if we're talking about something that's got to be organic, that's got to really be speaking about my business, then gosh knows you shouldn't just abdicate all of that to somebody else. You've got to be somebody that's in there paying attention to what's going out, what the message is, beyond all these technical issues. Do you agree with that, Carrie?
Absolutely. It's like anything is in anything that we do in marketing, right? You have to be a partner. You don't bring on just vendors, you're bringing in partners. And what you're going to get out of any vendor relationship is going to be enhanced by what you're able to contribute to it. Because, yeah, to your point, Mark, nobody's as familiar with your company, your business, your goals, your desires, how you want to
Your
see seen.
voice, right?
Yes,
Your voice, right?
exactly.
I mean, if we're talking organic, I mean that's a huge piece of it. I try sometimes to put all these things together, because I think too often we try to just compartmentalize. People are running a business, they got a lot of things to concern about, and they're thinking this is just something, well, I can just sort of put this over here and let somebody else do it, when you really need to be really actively involved in parts of it, not maybe down to the minutia. Richard, did you find what we were talking about?
I'm still digging. I've got so much things on
You know
there.
what?
It's like,
Listen, it's one of those things that we can always share after the fact, if that works out too. Let me do this. We've gotten so many questions that I want to do a little. I'm just going to do a little rapid fire here. First of all, here's one that Carrie, based on something you said earlier. What is an example of alt text on a photo?
Excellent question. So when you're, think about any email you've received, think about any website you've gone to where the images don't show for some reason, and you get that weird little graphic telling you that the image hasn't shown. Alt text is something that you enter when you upload those images to your website, or your website company does it, or when you're uploading your images into your emails, whatever you are, there's always a box for alt text. So it means alternative text. And that means, Google's crawlers, they're, think about spiders crawling your website. Images, it doesn't say anything. It doesn't know what it is. So if it's a brown leather sofa, you want to put in alt text of brown leather sofa,
Gotcha. Okay.
because that way the crawlers know what it just crawled. And so especially in an industry like ours, where our websites are incredibly image heavy,
Sure.
you get so, if you want to go home and do one thing today that's going to change your SEO, alt text. I'm telling you,
Well,
it's the number
and
one
Richard said it a little while ago, because he mentioned the fact that you might not come up as the top furniture store in Houston, but you could be the top hit for sofa if somebody's looking for sofas. This is kind of a good example of that. And Richard, you said something earlier about this being a little more of a marathon. So one of the questions was, how can I quickly get my new website to rank? And it sounds to me like you shouldn't think about that happening right out of the gates, right?
no, you're not going to see any SEO typically for 3 months at the best. And I always tell people plan on 6. There used to be a time, and it doesn't exist anymore, where Google came down to where they would make changes every February, March, and every kind of September, October, right before Q4 type of run. They are now making changes every couple of months. They may be small and they may not affect everything, but they're now making those changes ongoing. So you have to really continue SEO as a cycle all the way around. We used to be able to go in and do 3 months after we made a change, wait, do 3 months after we make another change, and just kind of keep it going. And now if you're not keeping up with it, you fall backwards so quick. I'll mention, because it's kind of a fun one, in making sure your content is useful. If you know you have content that's redundant or content that nobody really cares about, you can go in and mark it so that the bots don't read it and it doesn't hurt you. So you have the ability to, whether you do it as a canalized text or whether you do it as a no index, you can go and change that so that it gets skipped. And that way the bots won't read it and it won't ding you for basically text that it's there because you've got to have it there, but you know it's redundant because you said it 27 times all over the site. Because sometimes there's certain phrases and things that you just say over and over and over again. And okay, they just got to be there. I get it, it's part of your brand, but sometimes you have to go in and just say for that, canalized tag here, it's got to be there. Sorry, Google, but I got to have it. Or I need it to be skipped completely, and then you can put a no index and skip it completely.
Okay, fair enough. Here's another good question here that just came in here, and I think this is somebody that's clearly speaking from a situation, but we'll just read this as it is. How should you address these changes to SEO if you have a templated website controlled by a third party, where perhaps old SEO techniques are based in, little control of the structure?
And that's
Well,
something
Wix.
I deal with, it's something that we deal with. And it's, and going back to the example a minute ago about, how we used to do things on our websites and the footers, and then we used to do these spammy blocks and things like that, regardless of whether your website is being managed by that third party or not, it still comes back to it's your job to partner with them. And, so, I mean, honestly, one of the first things I did when I came into Bears was removed all those spam blocks that were on the website because, and that was something I would have brought up later, is that if your website is a little bit older, you do have to look at it with fresh eyes, and you do have to look at it through current SEO thinking. And, unfortunately, these third parties, they do a great job for us and they take a lot of work off our plate, but that doesn't mean that they can do everything. It doesn't mean that they notice that it's time to take something down. It doesn't mean, they're spread thin. They're covering a lot for us, and I'm extremely grateful for mine. However, it's not perfect, and it's the partnership that makes it function better.
And I would even add that you can run an audit on your site, whether you go out and take SEM Rush audit, whether you use a Screaming Frog audit. You can go to our site. We even offer a free audit up in the one corner as a tool thing. But run an audit on your site. It will tell you what some of the things are that are wrong. And some of those are going to be the big, blatant, big, chunky things to fix. And when you bring that back to your third party and you say, hey, these things are bad, and they may come up with, well, Google doesn't count that, Google doesn't really think about that. Look, the reason these audit tools exist is because they're the same things that everybody is seeing over and over again. And if your site loads really slow, that's a big deal, because there's what Google calls signals. And signals is a fancy word for saying top scoring thing. So if Google says this is a signal product, that means you've got to take care of these things. Content, great example, is a signal product. Backlinks is a signal product. So they're going to be some of the top ranked things that are in there. You may not get a big, bunch of fight back. It's like, oh, well, you don't have a good, your robot text piece isn't loaded in there. Well, that's a big deal, because it means the bots can't read your site. And while somebody may say, oh, that's not a big, it's a huge deal. Google switched to a product called BERT. It's a bidirectional AI. It's an artificial intelligence. It reads every website across the entire world in 4 weeks and 1 day. So when you hear the term re-index a site, it means that BERT is going to come back around and read your site every 4 weeks and 1 day. And they re-index it and they say, where do you rank? Way back when, as Carrie's referring to, things that we used to do evil, on the Disney side of things, it used to be if you said your site got updated or had a change, you could get them to re-index. So Disney put a little clock counter in there. You remember all those sites used to have clocks and counters at the bottom? That would be a new change to the site, which caused the Google to come back and re-index it. Well, all that's gone now, but Disney used to have the #1 fastest site for things because they would always say they had a change every 30 seconds on their site, which made their sites rank incredibly high for Google. So there's lots of ways to cheat the system, but as Google learns them, they kind of get around them. But you can ask for a re-index at any time. So if you update your site, you do anything, you can request a re-index, and it can re-index the site. So when you make change,
Oops, you kind of froze up there. Richard, you froze on us. I'm gonna just to hang with us. Hopefully the signal will come back there. Carrie, let me ask you a question. Richard said something a second ago that I thought was interesting. If your site has a lot of redundancies on it, and he was trying to talk about a little bit of a workaround, isn't that a concern? Should you also, if you want a responsive site that's organic in nature, that's going to be solid on the as when it comes to search engine optimization, wouldn't redundant not be a good thing? Wouldn't that be a little flag to say we need to make some changes?
I think what he was referring to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, was redundancies within your own site. So like if we had family owned and operated for over 75 years on every single one of our pages, that would be a
Right.
redundancy of text. In the grand scheme of things, I find that to be less of a concern. If I were looking at a site to try to find out
Okay.
what I need to make changes to, that would be one of those things that I would be less concerned about, even at the size of a site like mine. Our site is extremely large. Um, I don't know, over 200,000 pages, I guess. And so, I've got much bigger things that I put ahead of that before I get there. And Richard, I'm so sorry if I'm stomping on your your response with that one. But yeah, that's it's interesting, and I did make a note of it because I thought, well, that's kind of cool. But I feel like before I would um, do a no index on that, I would evaluate whether it was truly necessary to be everywhere.
Okay, appreciate that. Richard, are you back with us there? I think you're having a little bandwidth issues there. Are you back with us? Did you hear her response? Okay, I think he's having a little bit of trouble there. We're going to hopefully get
yep,
Richard back. Yeah, there you go. Okay, now we got you back.
yeah. Sorry, my client's lovely website, my internet is not the greatest here in Kansas.
Well,
Oh, jeepers. Kansas,
so
all right.
so let me ask a few of the other questions here. This is just, and I'm just asking them as they were written. Do blogs really help your SEO?
They do, properly executed.
Yeah.
How and
Say
why
if
would
they
be
have
my
the right
question.
if they have the right content. Yeah, I mean you can't just write a blog about puppies. You got to make the right content that matches up to what your site has on it, so that that content keyword matches, because blogs will show up as well as social media postings show up now in search. So those things can all relate, and you can tie your social media postings and things back to your website, and you should, because they'll all come back and be able to go backwards and forwards to your website with all the content.
And don't forget that the offsite blogs are also a strategy to help with reputation management, because having those show up before negative reviews is always a good thing.
And I would assume same thing with our URL question earlier. You also want to make darn sure though, if it's an outside blog, that that it's going to help your ranking, not hurt it. Is that still the same with a blog? You have to be careful as well as who you link with. Yes.
Not as cautionary, I don't think, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a baseline and up, not a
Okay.
baseline and down scenario, meaning you want to make sure that you've got relevant partners that are authoritative, and that raises your rank. If they're not authoritative, it doesn't drop it, it just doesn't do anything good for you.
Gotcha. Okay. So
Yeah.
well, that's a good.
So Sally the designer's blog, because she decides to put your store on, it's not going to really help you as much as she may think it does, because Sally's trying to position it, but it won't necessarily hurt you unless her positioning in her own site is really negative.
And it's really funny as we're talking about this. I'm also realizing that that just because a website is pretty and looks good doesn't mean it's a great SEO based website.
Absolutely.
Is that fair to say too? Because let's face it, a lot of
Absolutely.
websites are sold on the, on the aesthetic, right? So can you talk a little bit about that, and just that not all pretty websites are necessarily great when it comes to SEO?
Richard, you want to take this one or you want me to take this one?
Sure. Yeah. So what's interesting is a lot of people like, big images, lots of video, all kinds of cool things. But again, all that takes away from content. So if your whole site is nothing but big images and a logo, you don't have enough content on the site to feed the bots anything. So you start losing value in it. So it does have to be a good combination and a good mix of where is some content that again is beneficial to the reader, not beneficial to Google. So what are we going to have in there? What is the reader going to be looking for? What are the items they are searching for most often? And what are the ways they want to see things? That's the challenge in there, is if you just go all image and all big pictures and videos, it doesn't have that in there because there's no way for bots to kind of see that, especially on the video side. A lot of people are big on putting lots of motion video and stuff in there, and it doesn't really help a lot when it comes to SEO side.
Carrie, any thoughts as well?
I absolutely agree with that. And that's pretty much where I was going to go with that too. And then, adding to that, Google Shopping, Google puts out things, right? And Google learns as much from the products that they put out as, the service that it's providing. So Google puts out Google Shopping, and the data that they're collecting from this is huge, right? So Google has decided, and this is one of the things that'll happen with the algorithms of the bots. Google, through the learnings that they've gotten shopping, and that's my current soapbox, they're retraining their bots, if you will, to look for something different now because they want to feed the Google shopping machine, because the Google shopping machine is making Google lots of money, right? And however, it is definitely creating some issues. I have had numerous issues over the past several weeks because of Google shopping issues created by the new algorithm that it's doing there. And let me just be specific because I'm just talking in circles and people are going, what are you talking about? I have about 40% of my website is not priced. We've got, we're in furniture. Half the people on this call are probably nodding their head going, yep, familiar with that, right? IMAP issues, map pricing, all that kind of stuff. So if you're selling below that, obviously we just can't show prices, when we try to do things. So the newer algorithm, the bots have been picking up pricing from lower down in my page, where it's like similar items to love. So if they're looking at a Lexington piece, I don't have Lexington priced on the website because we're under map. So so you're looking at this beautiful Lexington piece. Google knows this is a page that's selling something. The definition of the page has told Google that. So it's looking, it finds an item, it finds a pretty picture, it finds a description, it doesn't find a price. So it keeps crawling until it finds a price, and it'll pick up. Oh, it's been a disaster. And, and if
Wow.
Lexington, if you're on the phone call, I'm so sorry, but they have no sense of humor about that. As I've learned, nor do any of my other vendors. But unfortunately, yeah, you do have to be looking at your website. It's not just about what it looks like; it's about what it's doing. And so, do we have to put in some markers to not index below that as a selling page? Is
I
there,
would say yes, you do.
there are things that we're going to have to learn here,
Right.
and quickly. But that's just the nature of when these things change. But
Wow.
that's,
Great
my
example.
2 cents.
Thank you for sharing that. But I can see where that caused you a little bit of heartburn. Let me ask you both this, because I saw this come up on a couple of the questions.
I'm frozen again.
I lost Mark. Nope. Mark, we lost you.
Okay, it's not me this time. Whew.
Nope.
I keep going in and out. I was like, I've been frozen multiple times, but now it's this time. It's Mark. All right. It's Google. They heard you talking trash about them. They're freezing you out.
Exactly. It's my fault. I've
That's it.
blackballed all of us now.
I'm just telling you. That's how it is. They do hear our voice.
Well, they certainly do.
So I don't know if you also saw that they got rid of AMP on the new release. So we no longer have to have the accelerated mobile page. So that changes everything when it comes to speed load and everything else for stuff. So there's no more HTML requirements to be like top articles or anything like that. So that's going to be an interesting side that we don't have to be. You can elevate yourself into the top article now without having AMP loaded into it.
Mm. Well, that's interesting to know. Yeah, page speeds is going to be something that's very interesting going forward there. I think Mark is calling in now. May as well continue on something we talked about a moment ago, changes to your website. So all of you right now are listening to this and you're going, I'm going to change my SEO. I'm going to do things. Just know when you make a lot of changes to a website at one time, you're going to take a little hit on your SEO. You know, just like having a new website gives you a hit. Like if you all of a sudden stop carrying Hooker furniture and that's like 25% of your website and you drop it off, you're going to take a hit, you know, and that hit's going to last anywhere from 30 to 90 days. It depends on how Google's feeling. And it depends on where they are in their cycles. And it depends on how big the change is, you know. Are you back with us, Mark? We just continued without you. And we still can't hear you.
No, that's okay. And I disappeared for a while you were talking. So there you go.
Well, there we are. I'm the most reliable. That's the surprising part of all
There you go.
this.
See, I need to get back to Florida. Obviously, it's like Midwest does not have good internet, and obviously California or wherever Mark is doesn't have good internet either.
Well, his lips are moving. It's all good.
How's that? Do you hear me now?
We hear you now. Welcome back.
Wow, I don't know what happened, but I'm using camera over here and I'm using audio on my phone. So whatever. All right, let me get back to thank you guys for tap dancing. I have no idea what in the world happened. So let me ask you guys this. I was asking about the term SEO campaign because I've seen people use that, and as I'm hearing you guys talk about SEO, I don't know that a campaign is necessarily a word that fits. This is like an ongoing kind of a process. Tell me about that. Should we excise that out of our vocabulary? Is that correct?
Yeah, it should be maintenance. It should be SEO maintenance because it's really site maintenance. That's what SEO really is. It's site maintenance. And I even tell people all the time, it shouldn't be even marketing budget. It should be the same kind of maintenance budget for operations. It's because you should be taking care of your website like operations, and it should be an operations budget issue, not a marketing issue. And that throws a lot of people off. But the reality is if you're not maintaining your building, your locations, your trucks, or anything else, you can't do your job. If you don't maintain your website, it's no different.
Love that. Thank you for that. And I also want to ask too that there's a question about, do I have enough content on my site to build SEO? Are there percentages? Should you have a certain type of mix between the content specifically and pictures, etc.? Because we've talked about how the bots pick up a little bit of everything.
I'm less concerned about any kind of percentage on that. It's more about quality. I mean, if you get nothing else out of this call, everything is about quality. It's about, you know, because that's all Google cares about. No matter what Google finds on your site, it's multiplied by a quality ranker, and then that's what your score is. But the quality score, both in SEO, in SEM, in pay-per-click, and everything that you're doing, quality score is very, very important. So the quality of your content is what's going to give you that quality score. So meaning it's relevant to you.
So if anybody is trying to look at a percentage or, again, formulaic aspect of this, you're saying there's no such thing?
Not really. It's just if you have no text, then you know you've really got to jump on that alt text wagon. But no, you need to have the information that seems reasonable for your product. So if you've got a sofa,
Okay.
You need to have color, you need to have fabric, you need to have dimensions, you need to have a small description about it, you know, but you need to have, you know, just those basics. Anything beyond that can be gravy, can be hurtful, depends on what you're getting into there. But you know, have the basics, you know, and then add to it as you can, but at least start with the basics.
Richard, let me ask you this question, because this is again from one of our webinar attendees here. When it comes to Meta description. How can I make my meta descriptions more appealing? How about that one? Tackle that one.
It's not about appealing, it's about making them as factual as possible and as helpful as possible. So remember when we started this, I said, you know, Mark, who leads up their SEO front, he wants you to have very easy and friendly content that solves the issue of whatever the searcher is looking for. So if you're going to put a meta description in there, it needs to tell somebody exactly what it is and how it's helpful. And if you're putting a meta description in because you want to have a bunch of cool names for different things you do, okay, it's not.
Okay,
Kansas.
Carrie, you're the only one today who hasn't frozen. How do you feel about that? You have the little fairy dust on your shoulder. Your signal's great.
Which is funny, with everything I'm going through, you'd think I'd be the one that's like all over the place. You know, and Richard is exactly right. Your meta descriptions have to make sense. Again, it goes back to quality, right? Your meta description has to be a quality description. You know, just period.
Gotcha. A couple of other questions here. Looking for help to drive local traffic to our store. I guess there's a concern that people are, you know, they're coming up in searches, but perhaps it's not quote unquote local traffic. Is that a misnomer? Or is that true? Richard, give it a shot. I think you're back.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely, you're going to get things that are outside of your market, and that's sometimes it's okay because you don't know if somebody's moving to an area or there, but local search, and the goal that local search wants for Google is to show up in your Google business profile. So you need to use your Google business profile. You need to put information in there. You need to treat it like a social media site. You need to be adding and updating and putting features and sales and whatever else is in there. And that will actually help you a ton for your local search, because the near me, the simple search, is always going to show up right there. I don't know if you can hear that airplane or whatever it is.
I was wondering who was
Wow.
landing the plane.
It's not, I don't know where it's coming from, but I was like, I hear some sort of airplane. But yeah, that local search side of thing is where it shows up, is in your Google Business Profile. They're moving Google Business Profile over to Maps, and that will become part of Maps in 2023. So the more work you do to it now, the better you'll position yourself on Maps and everything else going forward.
Okay, Carrie, you want to talk about the local aspect as well?
I was going to say the same thing, and I was going to bring up that Google My Business. We've all done so much work on developing our Google My Business pages, but yeah, they're disappearing and going on to the map product. But that's where you do set your trade area parameters. You know, that's where you set those things, and that's where you tell Google how you do business and where you do business. And so making sure that your Google My Business profiles are accurate and up to date at this moment is a really good thing. Just important.
You know, one of the things I have noticed, because I get this complaint a lot, they say their traffic drops off on the weekends. And they're always like, why is my traffic always drop on the weekends? If in your Google profile, your hours of operation, and most people put them in there, and they're less hours of operation, Google actually looks at that and says, well, I should send the traffic to this person over you because you're not open as often or open as long. So even things like that,
Wow.
control how much organic traffic you're picking up, or as much local search traffic that you're picking up, because they're making that decision based on those hours of operation in there. So if you're closed on Sunday, yeah, you're going to have some of the least amount of traffic, and your competitors are going to get a lot more because you may have better product, but Google says you're not available to do business. So that's the way they're going to direct the traffic.
Man, that's a huge takeaway. So how do you mitigate that? You want people to know your hours, or do you?
No, you definitely don't want to sit there and say I'm open on Sunday and not be. That would be a really bad thing. But understand that you're going to have that obstacle to overcome. So that means you're going to have to be looking at maybe adding something that is in the paid category to kind of help overcome that on those weekends, to give somebody a reason to come see you on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, you know, whatever day that you have to be there. There was a client I used to work with in the Virginia Beach market who had stores that were only open on the weekends. I know they still exist, so I won't call them out by name. But their whole push is to get you in there, you know, come in this weekend only at this place. And that's their whole pump, is to get you in there. And, you know, that makes a big difference when everybody else is trying to get you all during 7 days. They only got a weekend to push you in. So their organic traffic goes really high going into that weekend run.
Interesting. Carrie, any other thoughts relating to the whole local push?
Yeah, not 100%, other than what Richard just said made me think about. He said you might want to do an SEM push, a pay-per-click push on weekends and things like that if you're having that problem. Just know, and this is another one of my little soapboxes, SEO helps your SEM. Your SEM will work better if your SEO is healthy. So that's something to know, because anything that's got a high quality score on your SEO is going to have a higher score on your SEM, which means you've got a higher page rank, much, much higher page rank, when you've got those quality scores tied in. So if you're looking to adopt a strategy like that, and I think that's brilliant, Richard, then just know that you can piggyback the two. You can increase your SEM over the weekends, and you can do that in an intelligent way using your SEO results.
Interesting. So there is a way to invest a few dollars here to drive this. This is one spot we've talked about today that sounds like you could really pick your moment to really, again, make that push even more effective. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, let me ask you this as we're winding down here the last few minutes. So we kind of hit this early on, but so where do I find my ROI? I'm a business owner listening to this. Do I put key performance indicators into place, I should say, for my SEO plans? What are the returns that I can expect? How do I measure this? Help us out with that.
You want to go, or whatever? Take it.
You can start.
That's a jump
All
ball.
right.
You can go for it.
That's,
Jump in.
that's it. That's right. So for me, the three big KPIs I always want to measure against is total organic traffic. Then I want to take certain pages, key pages in the site, and see if I'm also getting new traffic and additional traffic to those key pages. And then I want to look for any sort of form fills or inquiries. Because if you're doing all the right things to drive more folks in, you should see that organic lift, but you should see that lift across the entire site, not just on one page. And then you should also see that start to convert with a better quality traffic, because there's one thing about bringing traffic to the site, but it's quality of the traffic too. So if that's not turning into form fills, inquiries, things that I can, turn into money, then it's just junk traffic, and anybody can send you junk traffic. I want quality traffic.
Carrie, any final thoughts on that?
And it's funny, I was in Google Analytics yesterday looking at my organic and just kind of seeing, I added the second dimension of landing page. I want to see where they're coming in. There are easy ways to do this. You don't have to be a genius to do it. I'm able to do it, which is good. But when I look at my organic, when I'm seeing a variety of landing pages that they're going to, that's telling me that Google's pretty happy with my site. It's finding content on multiple pages and sending customers where they, to exactly what they're looking for. If you're seeing too much of just the home page, then you probably have to look at your other pages, because honestly, we don't really want to be sending people to our homepage. The homepage exists for the reasons that it exists, but it is not going that people don't buy things from the homepage. We want them to find the content they want. We want them to find it quickly. And if your organic is directing them all over your site, that is a very good sign.
Well, first and foremost, I want to apologize to everybody who's been watching it, particularly our guests, all these technical issues. I know, Richard, you've had some issues, and then mine went south here, and I'm looking down because I've got a little monitor here now because this one's not working. Who knows why? But listen, I want to thank you two, first of all, for your patience. But I want to remind everybody, and let's go to the full screen here so we can give you this great reminder, is that we have a digital marketing resource for you, which is go.myhfa.org/digital. And that's where you can get a lot of this very specific information related to any and all of your digital efforts. But I want to thank our two guests today, Carrie Fletcher, who's Director of Marketing for Bears Furniture. And you're always terrific in joining us, and you always bring so much to the table. And Richard Harris, owner of Orbit Interactive. I appreciate you being here as well. And we will just remind everyone, you can find this webinar if you want to relive the magic, the technical magic. We will, of course, have that at myhfa.org/webinar. As always, I want to wish everybody watching good health, good sales, and we will see you next time. I'm Mark Schumacher. On behalf of all of us here at HFA, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.